Hello, hello out there. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha. And this is the show for the thinking global citizen that is not afraid to step outside of the box and look around and see what's out there. There is really interesting things out there. And you'll never know unless you step out of the box sometimes to try to find those things. And yeah, my name is Augie, and my co-host Nori is on vacation still, and we're coming to you from about 40 different platforms all over the world. And because we are also transmitting through the wonderful platform of the Cosmic Awakening Network. And because of them, we are also transmitting on Roku, 3 TV stations, and a bunch of other places. So check them out on the Conscious Awakening Network. They got about, I don't know, 45 different shows there, from absolutely from one end of the spectrum to the other one, and all kinds of things that you just can't live without. So just go visit them. And before I introduce the guest, I want to tell you how also you can connect with us. You can connect through broadcastteamalpha.com. And you can send us a message there and we'll get back to you. If you are watching on YouTube right now, please subscribe and click the bell, because that way you'll get a notification when the next video is coming out. And that is also the best place to watch, because that's the only place where we monitor and we can answer your questions on the in the chat room there. And otherwise, if you ask questions, put them in capital letters and we'll see if we can get to them. Maybe Mac can help us out on this one, because I only got, 2 ears and 1 mouth and a couple of hands, so I can't get to everything. And one more thing I want to tell you about. Nori and I put together a spiritual think tank. And that is where we do some incredible things. It seems like sometimes we create out of seemingly absolutely nothing, and things happen because we found out how to communicate with the unified field or the universal mind, and it listens. So if you want to have a look at what we're doing and be part of something that is absolutely bigger than ourselves, send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. I'll send you some information. I'll send you a link so you can come and sit in, and you can be part of a session that we do, where we do communicate with the universal mind. And we're getting good results, tremendous results, both in abundance and healings. And it happens just about every time. So just come and check it out. And now I'm going to introduce the guest for you. And this is going to be very special, because we have an extraordinary, unusual guest. And here is why. We have Michael W. Hall with us. Now, he is also known as the paranormal lawyer. He's an attorney. And you can ask, yeah, I asked that too. How in the world did an attorney get involved in UFOs and extraterrestrial research? He must be a little different, and you're going to find that he is. He's also a doctor of jurisprudence and former Superior Court judge. He's also been a UFO field investigator for 49 years, a long-time consultant to MUFON, that's Mutual UFO Network. And also he's an attorney for National UFO Reporting Center and the National Aviation Reporting Center of Anomalous Phenomena. And that's where most pilots report their sightings, because I think that's the only one they know about. Pilots don't get out much, He is also an examiner an experiencer himself. And he's the legal counsel and advisory capacity for very high-profile people within the UFO and the extraterrestrial field. If I mention their names, you would all know them. So beyond that, I want to welcome Michael to the show. Welcome.
Augie, thank you very much for having me on this sterling show. I really enjoy what you do out there in the world. So, matter of fact, I have often thought that if ever you or myself teamed up as a paranormal team, we could have taken everything by storm by now.
I love storms. Yeah, just not when I'm flying. That'd be all right. But
Oh yeah.
no, I do have a beginning question, but before I mention the beginning or the first question, I want to tell the listeners what we're going to hear a little bit about today. We are going to hear about the government document or documents, even more than one, that absolutely beyond any kind of question proves that yes, UFOs are real and the extraterrestrial presence is real. Governments are talking to them, many different governments. And also we're going to talk about what we are to expect from here on. I'm going to bring up that, and the two of us will discuss that one a little bit, because there are some similarities in the way we think and what we have researched. And for those of you that want to know a little bit about what we can expect here, and also hear about the government documents that prove that the government's been lying to you, it could get interesting. All right, here's the first question for you. Now, you're an attorney. Actually, you're a lawyer. I don't know. There's a difference between those two, but we're not going to go there. You're a lawyer, and what in the world happened to you somewhere in your past that made you become interested in UFOs and extraterrestrials? There's got to be a story behind that. I'm all ears.
Okay, well, Augie, it's not really a dramatic story, like a sighting when I was like 5 years old, or, entities appearing in my room, that kind of a thing. As far as I remember, by the way, I have not really been regressed hypnotically in that regard, but one day maybe I should. But the whole idea of my interest in UFOs predates my becoming a lawyer for many, many years. It started out as a kid. I grew up in New York City, Augie, in Manhattan on West 121st Street. The same, actually, my next door neighbor was an older guy in the neighborhood named George Carlin.
Really?
Yeah, and this was, an interesting neighborhood by Riverside Church and Morningside Park. This is maybe George Carlin nicknamed our neighborhood later in life when he became famous, White Harlem. That's where I grew up as a kid. And, of course, on Saturday mornings, we would get our 25-cent, allowance and go down to the local corner store and spend like an hour or two looking through the comic books. And then, finally they kick us out, and, we'd have to buy one and we'd leave. But I started out with the Superman comic books, Green Hornet, Flash, all those wonderful, ideas of, strange life coming from other planets, and coming down here to Earth. And then, of course, I graduated into the dime novels, the 1950s contactee books, George Adamski, George Van Tassel. Yeah. These guys were way ahead of their time, coming out and casually telling everyone that they have become friends with local people on the planet who come from different, necks of the cosmos, like Venus and everywhere, and Saturn and stuff. So I was always interested in that. For some reason, I just gravitated to the idea that we might not be alone in the universe.
Yeah.
Then, of course, when I grew up, I was just always fascinated with the stuff. In college, as I mentioned to you, I became a field investigator for APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, based out of Tucson in your neck of the woods there with Jim and Coral Lorenzen. And that was kind of the beginning of my really becoming serious and looking at what's going on. I went to law school in California, by the way. I went to Southwestern University and got my law degree. But, as soon as I graduated from law school, I always started this pro bono kind of work on the side of helping my fellow researchers and friends in the field of ufology in their basic legal issues that they came up with. Typically, they have NDAs they got to sign, and someone has a contract they want to give them to appear on a television show, or they need to create a nonprofit corporation and those kinds of things. And of course, we'll talk about the disclosure trust and the various trusts that I've done over the years as well, as you're well familiar with. So anyway, I was always doing that on the side with a general legal practice, and I've always enjoyed that. So, when I became a Superior Court Judge pro tem doing settlement conferences for the Thurston County Superior Court, that was a little bit more staid and dried compared to my UFO pro bono work, but I enjoyed that as well, meeting people and coming up with problems that had to be resolved. But now that I'm retired, I'm 71 years old, just a spring chicken as far as what you tell me, but thank you for that. I really enjoy doing what I'm doing now. I'm literally spending a lot of full time writing books. We can talk about some of them, and working on a brand new one now that we might want to discuss as well. But that's kind of how I got started. It's a long story, but there you go.
Yeah, there you go. I want to touch on both of those things, especially what's coming out in the new book that you're putting together. And I think that's going to be a thing that is going to be absolutely necessary. But I want to ask you first, the way it sounds, you've done more research than I have. And you'd found something called the Core Secret Transcript. And that is basically the smoking gun of that the government's been lying to us because they've known about UFOs and terrestrial beings for a long time. Speak to that, please.
Oh, thank you, Augie. That was a great intro, by the way. Thank you for giving that to me here. My client, I've represented researchers and ufologists and people in the field for almost 50 years now. Or not, actually since 1988, so it'd be like 35 years. But my client, Grant Cameron, who is the ultimate UFO researcher, I call him the mole. I mean, this guy, since the 70s, has visited almost every presidential library in the United States, finding out what the presidents knew or should have known at that point about UFOs. And so he's always been doing the research into archives and etc. At one point, this would have been June of 2019, I received a encrypted text on my phone, my iPhone. Now, I don't know about you, Augie, but I have never really received an encrypted text, and I had no idea what this was. I'm going, oh man, do I need to should I even open it? Is this going to be like one of those collection agencies looking for something that I haven't paid or whatever? I decided to finally get down and open this thing up, and it was from my longtime client, Grant Cameron. Grant Cameron is a Canadian researcher par excellence in the UFO field. If anybody wants to look him up. And his cryptic text was this: Michael, I'm just about ready to drop a major UFO bomb, and I need to run it by you as the paranormal lawyer. And that was it. That was the text. Now I
Hmm.
get on my phone right away and text him back. I even phoned him and left a voicemail and emailed him as well. I said, Grant, I'm here. Let me know what you need. And I was totally confused, but I figured that something that amazing from Grant Cameron has got to be pretty interesting. So
Big
I'm
thing. Yeah.
waiting to hear from the guy. Now here's the real interesting thing. 9 days go by, Augie, and I don't hear a word from Grant. And I'm thinking, oh my word, this was Grant's last gasp, to try to get word out to someone that he knew and trusted before they offed the poor guy. They kind of
Oh.
this would have been so big potentially that they got to him. Anyway, I finally get a hold of him, and he literally for the next hour on the phone tells me what happened. And if we've got time, I'm going to go through the story of how Grant Cameron came across the smoking gun memo of all time that proves the existence of aliens, spacecraft, and the reverse engineering programs that the government is doing. So what he told me was that he was at a conference and he was doing his spiel like he does, and people come up to him after the conference typically and want to talk with him. And one gentleman came up. He didn't know him at the time, but he said, Mr. Cameron, I have a document that I think you need to look at. And of course, Grant is a pretty busy guy. He was about ready to get on a shuttle flight to go to another conference and speak again. So he said, can you email it to me? I don't have time to look at it. And the gentleman's name was James Rigney from Australia. And he was an amateur UFO researcher. He's also a very good architect as well, but he's an amateur ufologist. And he says, Mr. Cameron, I just need 5 minutes of your time. And he showed him, Grant, the very first page on a little iPad of a document that made Grant Cameron's face go ashen, he said. He said the blood drained out of his head. He looked at the first page of this document, recognized names, recognized unacknowledged special access programs that only he really knew about because of his research over the years. And he said, where did you get this document? And this James Rigney says, well, a friend of his was a friend of Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo 14 astronaut,
Yeah.
who had died a few years prior to this and had literally left multiple banker boxes full of documents in his estate. And his family they're not interested in this stuff, all this paperwork, wanted to get rid of it. And James Rigney's friend, and also an Australian, decided to take the boxes off the family just to kind of get them out of the house for them. And they were sitting around this Australian's house for a year without anyone even looking at them. And James Rigney found out that his friend had these banker boxes and said, this is Edgar Mitchell's paperwork. I would love to go through it. And so he did. And James Rigney, being a ufologist himself and knowing what to look for, came across a memo that literally blew the socks off of disclosure. This document purports to be a meeting between Admiral Thomas Ray Wilson, who was at that time J2, Joint Chiefs of Staff, second in command, in charge of all the intelligence departments of the military. You're talking Air Force, Navy, Army, Marines, Coast Guard, all the intelligence departments of the military was underneath this Admiral Wilson. And his meeting was purportedly with Eric Davis, the longtime physicist that has been involved in the background in the military and industrial complex issues regarding UFOs and and the paranormal. And for an hour and 20 minutes, these gentlemen met in the Admiral's staff car behind the EG&G building in Las Vegas, Nevada at McCarran International Airport and talked about what the Admiral was able to do in finding out about these interesting special access programs being run by private military contractors. And this one military contractor, which will go nameless because he would not name them at the time to Eric Davis, literally had a group of gatekeepers who was keeping the lid on what they were doing. The Admiral got some leads from Stephen Greer, the physician ufologist himself, who literally did a Pentagon briefing with Admiral Wilson in 1997, along with Edgar Mitchell, Commander Willard Miller, and others, and literally gave him some leads that the Admiral finally followed up on and was able to get this meeting with this unacknowledged special access committee. This group literally at one point, I'll cut a long story short, but after a lot of haranguing and the Admiral saying that it's been a mistake that you haven't briefed me on what you're doing because I am in charge of all of these special access programs that the Pentagon is running, and I haven't heard about the details of what your process is. The Admiral thought for sure that they were a program probably hiding underneath the term of extraterrestrial, that were probably reverse engineering technology from Russia, China, or earthly technologies that have been crashed, and trying to figure out how they work, warheads and spycraft and all that stuff. But in reality, after a while, the gatekeepers finally spilled the beans, told him that no, we are actually a reverse engineering program dealing with technology of not of this world, they say, not made by human hands. And that's in this 15-page single space memo that confirms the bottom line, confirming that the military is in possession of a working spacecraft that can travel through interstellar space, through our atmosphere, of course, underwater, and through dimensions. That's the confirmation in this memo. Yeah. And literally, they are confirming that Roswell, New Mexico crash happened, the retrieval of alien bodies, both dead and alive, of the reverse engineering process that has been going on behind the scenes in Black Ops for generations, and the fact that they are in possession of multiple crashed spacecraft. Now, this is a document literally that confirms everything that we've already been, researching and knowing about for years as ufologists. But it's the first time that there has ever been high-level confirmation of these issues. Well before even David Grush in the Senate and the congressional hearings that just recently happened. This was a document on paper that proved it all.
Let me ask you this. This is phenomenal. Did this front page of that document have any stamps or classified, restricted, eyes only, or anything? Or did it just slip through the crack?
Let a paranormal paralegal like yourself come up with a question like that. That is perfect. Because I'll tell you what, that is one of the first things that I asked Grant Cameron when he gave me this text and we finally talked over the phone. Grant and I were trying to figure out, indeed, will we end up being given a free one-way trip to Guantanamo Bay if we mention anything about this document, that we have it in our possession? And literally, we had it for 6 months trying to vet it trying to figure out what to do with this document before it actually was leaked to the public. But there were no classified stamps. This was a document that was from a private citizen, Dr. Eric Davis, from a private conversation that he had with the J2 Admiral Thomas Wilson after he was retired. So it was not classified. It was amazing.
That's amazing. Wow. That this is one of the many that is out there. But the others, they have been classified. This one slipped through the crack, obviously.
Yes, and as you well know, the classified documents are kind of being leaked, drip by drip to the public, from the FBI, the CIA. There's been actual classified documents talking about these issues for decades, and now we're finally they're seeing the light of day. My client Grant Cameron was literally one of the people that came across a memo from the 1950s from a gentleman by the name of Wilbur Smith from Canada, who literally was able to get a document out of the United States confirming that UFOs were the highest classified issue in the United States at the time in the 1950s, and it was even classified higher than the atomic bomb process at the time. So literally these documents have been out there, and but there has never really been a high level confirmation in writing like the Admiral Wilson, Eric Davis smoking gun memo of the century. And by the way, that term was coined by Richard Dolan, the UFO historian. When that was released, I finally was able to get a copy of it to Richard, in June of 2019, when he broke that story himself as well.
Yeah. This is really something, and it verifies actually another document that I dug out, and that was I had it for probably 25 years now, 20 years, and that is it was released by the FBI, and that is a document where they say it's a memo actually, FBI memo where they explain that the extraterrestrials that was found at Roswell, they were of course 3 foot tall, big eyes, I mean a big head and 3 long fingers, and they say that explain what they were like. And that also coincides with another document that I've had for about 30 years, and that is something that hardly anybody knows about, and that is one from the South African Air Force. And people can research this by, I don't know about Google, but use another one, the Kalahari Desert Crash in South Africa. And because here's the front side of this document, that's what you're looking for. And in there, they explain what the pilots and the people in the extraterrestrial crash that they found, that crashed in the Kalahari Desert. They say that it came into the atmosphere over the South Pole, went north towards South Africa, and they saw them on radar, so they tried to contact and nothing worked. So they sent up 2 Air Force fighter jets, and they tried to contact the craft, and that didn't work. So they had authorization to fire on them, and they did. But what it also says in the document is that they were fired by a Thor 2 Maser cannon. That is a piece of weaponry that has been poo-pooed throughout the whole weapon system or UFO arena. They say, oh, that's just something they made up. No, it isn't. It's in the Air Force document. Thor 2 single-faced Maser cannon. You can Google it if you like. You get, and in there, they were able to decipher the language. Excuse me. Here is something that explains the language.
Oh my.
See the goofy symbols.
Yes.
It's an interesting document, and if you don't have it, I'm going to send it to you because you need this one. Because there is, they also said that when they did the autopsy of these individuals or things in the craft, they found that, yeah, they were about 3 foot tall, 2 big heads and eyes and stuff, but they were closer to a plant in physiology than a human. Now
Isn't that
is,
interesting?
yeah, it's all in the
Oh,
document. You should research. This one was declassified after a little bit, but we got it while it was classified. We got it from a Jesuit priest in Switzerland because he happened to be in South Africa when it happened, and he was kind of in on it. So we got it, and we didn't really dare to do much with it because we knew it was classified. But until a good friend of mine that works at he's a UFO investigator in Omaha, Nebraska, he told me, "Don't worry about it." It says nothing's going to happen. Just blow it out there, and we did. But hardly anybody knows about it anymore. So it
well,
proves
well, well,
all over it.
thank God for legal beagles like yourself who are able to get these documents out into the open. And I
Yeah,
am just salivating to get my hands on the document and look at it myself. So thank you for that offer.
yeah, we'll make sure you get it. And I see now that we're down to the bottom of the hour. And for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Michael W. Hall. He's a UFO investigator, and they call him the paranormal lawyer. So you can find him on Facebook under Michael W. Hall. He's got a lot of good information and stuff on there you read to see. So let's go on a little bit further. And about 1998 or so, there was a movie that came out, actually a video that came out, The Alien Autopsy. And it fascinated the daylight out of it when it came out. Can you talk a little bit about, because I know you know things about that most people don't know.
Yeah, it's it's a fascinating story. To go way back to tell about how this kind of thing surfaced initially. Um, my client Grant Cameron, the Canadian researcher, amongst some of the other things that he dug up was an email thread from a Dr. Kit Green, who was literally a guy at the CIA who ran the weird desk, they called it back in the old days. Dr. Kit Green was actually a medical doctor, and he had an email thread that Grant came across and found in one of the archives when Dr. Green was talking with some of his other fellow NIDS board directors, and that is the National Institute of Discovery Science, ran by Robert Bigelow. And they were talking as board members back and forth regarding the alien autopsy film that Ray Santilli from England had put out there and famously made some documentary productions out of. This email thread literally was talking about the fact that the people on the board of directors of NIDS had seen the alien autopsy film, and they were talking amongst themselves on what they thought of the film. And Dr. Kit Green at that time and some of the other NIDS board of directors were saying, you know what? I have seen a documentary film with this same kind of footage in the past at the Pentagon. That's how this whole thing kind of started out, with Grant Cameron going, well, maybe this is not a hoax. maybe this thing is not just a commercial venture by Ray Santilli. So what happened was we got Ray Santilli on the phone. Grant Cameron and myself did a podcast back in the old days. It was probably 10 or 15 years ago by now, about what he was actually trying to portray here in this alien autopsy video that was all over television back in the day. And literally, we pinned him to the bottom line, because I won't make this a long scenario here. But the idea was that he actually confirmed this was a recreation that he came up with vintage footage and simulated footage, but that he had actually also interspliced within his recreated footage real footage of the alien autopsy that supposedly happened in Roswell, New Mexico, from 1947. And that's the bottom line, that he says that, yeah, okay, this is a recreation, but in reality, we got a hold of through an old Army videographer who was on duty that day, filming this alien autopsy. And of course, most of the film had been destroyed, but some of the footage that they were able to save was put into this new alien autopsy movie. So I don't know what to think about the whole idea, but literally, if you got some people from the NIDS board of directors confirming that they've seen something similar, you've got Ray Santilli confirming that he literally found some old recovered footage from 1947 and used it in his recreation. These kinds of things lend me to believe that there's some truth to this entire event. And of course, we probably won't know the bottom line, at all, but hopefully it's something to conjecture about.
I personally think that it, if not all of it, most of it is actually real, because I think it's part of that drip indoctrination that dates back probably 50 years all the way up to now, slow form of education all the way up to disclosure. I think it is part of that.
Good point. I think you're right. All of this, as you well know, Augie, being in this field so many decades yourself, all of this is slow, dripping disclosure. But I'll tell you what, my bottom line is that I believe there's a reason why it's been happening so quickly lately. I believe we probably have been given a deadline on this planet. I think the powers that be have had their chains pulled at one point, saying, if you don't do it, we're going to do it. Maybe even the ETs will do it themselves. So I don't think it's going to be very long before we actually get that first domino tipped over is going to do the whole thing.
Yep, absolutely. I think so too. There's another issue that is was very interesting, and that is what was called Operation High Jump. And I seen some video footage that actually at one time was on YouTube, and I can't find it anymore, but that was Admiral Byrd went to the to Antarctica with a armada of airplanes and ships and 5,000 soldiers, and he got beat the shit out of himself down there, so he limped home. But there is a video footage that show round circular flying discs flying over the ships, shooting at the ships with some looks like lightning bolts. And could you speak a little bit about what you know about this? Because this is real. It did happen. They tried to get rid of whatever they thought was at base 211, probably the Nazi base down at Antarctica, and that's as much as I know. So it's all yours.
Well, you're very well up to speed on this, Augie, and it's just fascinating. This is the same Admiral Byrd, by the way, who literally, now this is the Antarctica, expedition. He literally went to the North Pole himself and flew over the North Pole, initially before this. And that's when he first came back with these amazing stories that he was telling, that there were actual UFOs that he encountered in the North Pole, and literally a beautiful tropical place up in the center of the top of the earth, supposedly, that didn't have any ice or anything like that, and it had a race of people up there as well. So all of a sudden he goes, he gets a lot more people together, and goes on this major expedition to the South Pole in Antarctica. And it's amazing to think that the reason we really heard about a lot of this was his son recovered supposedly a diary that he wrote. And by the way, his son, Admiral Byrd's son, was one of the officers in Project Blue Book for the Air Force's UFO investigation program back in the 60s and the 50s. This was Admiral Byrd's son, who was into this also, of course, because he heard about from his father. But he recovered this diary that basically said, in Admiral Byrd's own words, how they went down there with a whole armada, as you mentioned, of ships, battleships, airplanes, by the way, off of the ships themselves, the aircraft carriers. And literally, from what I gather, as you mentioned, were sent back home with their tails between their legs, because they had met with alien spacecraft. Well, they think it was alien. Actually, who knows? It could have been even a breakaway civilization that went down there, after World War II, and potentially even the Nazis, and put together an organization that might even be living underneath the Antarctica continent. Who knows? But that is just something that was clamped down so quickly. Matter of fact, I even saw Admiral Byrd on some talk shows in the 50s. I don't know if you've seen some of those old footages and stuff. It's fascinating how he is trying to recount what happened during his expeditions. And of course, you could tell that he was hamstrung by what he could say on the air back in 1950s. But he was quite sincere at the time.
Yeah. And he talks about the land beyond the pole. So there is something there beyond the pole that we're not told.
Well, we've always heard that Antarctica is almost a mountain of ice until you can get over it. And then there's a whole new area that we haven't even explored. As a matter of fact, they don't even let you go there. They won't let you fly over it nowadays. Even the military is restricted from flying over that area.
Yeah, and I know, because I looked into this. I'm a pilot, and the area where the North Pole is supposed to be at the top of the world is restricted airspace. At the South Pole, where the South Pole is restricted airspace. You can't get in there without having government permission. And guess who that government is? United States. United
there you
States.
Go.
Yeah. And I know that when you fly from, let's say, from United States to Tokyo, you can actually fly over the pole, they tell you, but they won't let you fly over the pole. You fly around the pole. Nobody can be allowed to fly over the pole. So there is stuff going on here. And this particular story is very interesting. I'm going to take 45 seconds and tell you. I've been sitting around in pilot lounges around the country a lot. You flew people out, you're waiting for them to get done and fly them home. But I got in Kansas City one time, the pilots of the Concorde, they came into town and they parked, and the three or four pilots was in the pilot lounge with me, and we got to talking. And of course, I can't help it. I have to bring up UFOs. And two of them, they were very interested. And I talked about the hollow earth. And one of them, I got to talk about that, and he said, wait a minute, he says, this could make sense, because when we fly over the pole, they fly over there a lot, going from continent to continent. He says, I look out the right side and you can see a little bit of curve going up, like convex. When I look out the left side of the cockpit, there's a little bit of curve going the other way, concave.
Oh my.
So I always wondered, why is it different on the right side than the left side? If there's a hole going into the center of the earth on the left, it could make it look like a hole, couldn't it?
Exactly.
And
Oh my.
yeah, so it was really puzzling. But I think afterwards I discovered, by thinking about it, that I think they just confirmed to me that there's something there. You can't fly over the pole because there isn't any, but you can fly around the inside rim of the hole, and that's what they call the North Pole.
Oh my
Anyway,
goodness.
yeah. So that's a good. I see where the clock are running on us, but I want you to talk a little bit about that new book that you're putting out, because I think there's going to be a lot of religious fanatics that are going to need that book when they see the sky is full of ships and they're not all demons or jinns.
Yeah, well, that's I appreciate that intro too, because I would love to be able to tell you about what I'm working on. The book is called UFOs and the 21st Century Church. I've been a faith-based guy my entire life. I was past vice president of Puget Sound Christian College as well. And I was always the kid in Sunday school that'd be asking the weird questions, what's up with all these giants in the Bible and these witches and all of the strange things that you can read. Matter of fact, I say that the Bible itself is probably one of the most paranormal documents that we have here on this planet. Literally, if you get into some of that stuff, you're being going, wait a minute, this stuff has been going on for millennia, not just since the 1940s here on the planet. But what I thought is that literally when disclosure happens, as it is right now, the church is going to have a difficult time at one point. They're going to be facing a paradigm shift, I believe, that is going to be earth-shaking to Christian-based and faith-based believers. And my feeling is that if we lose the local churches on the corner, the Baptist church, the Methodist church, the local pastors who literally hold the fabric of our society together, we are going to be in bad shape as a society ourselves. So this book is my humble attempt at trying to bring to the fro information to help Christians and faith-based believers get over the coming paradigm shift that is swiftly happening on a daily basis right now.
Yeah, and this is not just the Christians. The Muslims, they're going to be just as confused, because not everything out there is a jinn. There's got to be something more.
Well, and if you go into the Old Testament, you're talking about Muslims and Christians and all sorts of religions stem from our father Abraham completely. So who knows what's going to happen when this thing hits the fan. But I tell you what, I don't know that there's anybody out there attempting to do this kind of thing, but I'm thinking ahead on definitely what does a post-disclosure world look like. And I think the faith-based believers are going to need some help.
Yeah, absolutely. And also what we were talking about earlier was the documents that prove that the government is lying to us. And you wrote a book about this. Let's talk about that book a little bit also.
Well, thank you. That's the one called Core Secrets. It's up on Amazon, and it's about this smoking gun memo that Grant Cameron, found or got given by this James Rigney, the Australian, and the fact that this document, 15 pages, single spaced, is a transcript of the meeting from Admiral Wilson, who basically spills the beans, in this regard, and confirms all the things that we've known and researched as ufologists over the decades, but no one has been able to get any confirmation of. So, yeah, that's the book called Core Secrets.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, in there, you're going to find out a lot more than what we were able to talk about in this short interview. And
hopefully, thank you.
Yeah, and one more thing, though. I think a lot of people in the UFO field, they heard about when everybody was trying to storm Area 51. You were there.
Yeah, I was. I was the only full-time field investigator reporter that was podcasting live for 5 days from the Little Alien, Connie West's beautiful little bar out there in the middle of nowhere in Rachel, Nevada. And literally the world showed up in the middle of nowhere for 5 days. And it was a phenomenal experience. I kind of equated it to Woodstock for the baby boomers. It was literally that way. Literally people from around the world came there, slept in their cars, slept on the ground because it was the middle of the summer. It was beautiful, even at night. The bonfires were awesome. And of course, the big event happened at the back gate of Area 51 at 3 a.m. in the morning on the 21st of July. And that was an amazing event where there was kind of been rumored that there was going to be a storming of the gate at that time, and everyone was supposed to meet and see what they could do. In reality, what happened was I was amazed at the camo dudes because they were trained somehow how to deal with a crowd like that. And literally, the bottom line was they befriended the ufologists wanting to storm the gate, and literally it became a love fest. And we were taking selfies and talking with these young, officers, literally, and camo guys that were there trying to keep people appeased on what was going on. It was quite an event, I thought.
That's good. That is good. Now, yeah, I see we got 5 minutes left, but there is one thing that is close to my heart that I know will help a lot of people if they understand what we're going to talk about next. And that is how to protect your property. Now, you're a lawyer and you have been helping people set up trusts. What you are calling it is that the disclosure trust or the whistleblower trust. Now, not everybody out there is a whistleblower, but this will apply to everybody. I know enough about trust to know that if you have everything you own put in trust and you die, nothing will happen. No probate, no nothing. It all goes to your family. If you don't have a trust, it'll go into probate. The state will take half of it. In case of Roy Rogers' case, they take 90%. And it is gone. The state takes it. So listen really close to what Michael can help you do.
Well, thank you, Augie. With your experience as a paralegal and knowing how trusts work, I think it's fascinating that we need to get to people and tell them that they should talk to their local lawyer, their estate planning lawyers, paralegals, on how to protect their assets, because that is a big deal. When you die with a will, you literally are placing yourself before the state in basically coming with transferring title to your beneficiaries or heirs that you name in the will document. But there is a long process. Typically, in my state of Washington, the probate process is 22 months, almost 2 years. So, it takes that long. You've got to hire a lawyer typically to get through the process, because I tell my clients it's almost like divorcing yourself from the world when you die. Literally, it's a process. And basically what I have done with my whistleblower clients like Grant Cameron, et cetera, is create a trust document where they put their secrets, their artifacts, their documents in this trust. And literally, they don't own it any longer. They can protect themselves and their loved ones from possible harm by saying that if anything ever happens to them, this trust has a dead man's trigger, and it's going to be published around the world. But the same thing with probate. If people want to avoid the cost, the delay of potentially estate planning succession, they call it estate succession, they should talk with their local paralegals like yourself and lawyers.
Yeah. And I've heard so many horror stories about people that die intestate, or they die without having even a will. Because look up the definition of will in Black's Law Dictionary and you're going to get scared. It's not a good one, because in fact, you don't even own your property. You are the tenant. If you have a mortgage, you're the tenant. And there is a way that even if you have a mortgage on the house, you can still put it in trust, because you put your equity in the trust. And if you fall behind on your mortgage, the bank come and say, okay, we're going to take your property. Then you tell them, fine, go right ahead. But you don't own the equity, so pay me off first. And they don't want to do that. So they're going to come back and say, oh, let's refinance with a lower payment so you can stay in the house. I think you know that.
Well, there you go. And not that we're going to give legal advice tonight. Obviously we can't do that. But this is something fascinating for people to think about, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would repeat one more time where they can find your books, and maybe also let them know when the new one will be out, because I couldn't see it on Amazon yet. So let us know a little more.
Well, thank you. Yes. They can always look on Amazon.com for Michael W. Hall. All of my books are up there. I've got 24 books and short stories that people, I think, would be interested in. The new one I'm hoping will be out by Christmas. That's my goal, is to get this thing up by December sometime, so people can maybe look at it and potentially give it as a gift if they would like. So that's my goal and deadline right now, and I'm furiously working on it as we speak. So thank you so much for that opportunity, and for the opportunity to be on your show. I have wondered and wished to do this for a long time. So thank you.
Yeah, this was fun. And yeah, get it done by Christmas, because that will be a great Christmas present.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think there is, yeah, we're out of time here shortly. I have a favorite question that I like to ask the guests. And I didn't tell you about this because I wanted to blindside you. So the question is, if you could talk to the whole world and the world was listening, what would you tell them?
Oh, I love that question. That's fantastic. I would tell them that we all need to raise our consciousness thinking and go deeper inside ourselves. If we're looking for answers outside of ourselves, from a religious institution, from a guru or anything like that. Really, as Jesus was saying over and over again, it's all within you. You
Yeah.
are the source of the knowledge you need to know. We need to concentrate more on that. And that's what I believe is our future here on the planet.
That's a good advice. That's good advice. And there are always people. If you don't know where to go to YouTube. Look up videos by Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Sadhguru, Augie Nostro, anybody else. Because they may, in their video, you may find a pearl that can lead you to the right path. Sometimes outside influence that solidifies inside knowledge.
Very good. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being with us. And gosh, this was fun. We have been listening to Michael W. Hall, and we were talking about the government document that prove the UFOs are real, extraterrestrials are real, and a lot more. So if you joined us late, go back and listen to the first part. There's good stuff in it.